Well, my friends, this weekend we take a little break from our reading of the Gospel of Mark that we read during this Year B lectionary cycle. And we're going to take 5 weeks, and we're going to be reading now from the Gospel according to St. John. This is our John interlude that we get every 3 years, which is the entirety, or almost the entirety, of chapter 6 of the Gospel of John, which here is the multiplication of the loaves and fish. We're going to skip over Jesus walking on water, and then we're going to have 4 weeks of what's called the Bread of Life discourse. So starting next week for 4 weeks, we'll be reading this Bread of Life discourse, one of Jesus' major speeches in the Gospel of John, where he teaches how he himself is the bread of life. And it all gets kicked off with this event today with the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. So I would just recommend that this is a great opportunity over the next couple of weeks to go home to your Bibles at home and open them up and just read chapter 6 of the Gospel of John. Just one chapter in the next 5 weeks to kind of finish up some summer reading. But let's read and really read it, right? Come to Mass maybe next weekend and the weekend after, having looked at the Gospel of John, chapter 6, so we kind of know where we're going. Father Daniel and I actually just did this earlier this week, that because we're going to have a sequence of readings, we sat down to kind of coordinate our homilies a little bit so that we're going to be going for 5 weeks through this one chapter, and let's be sure that we're on the same page for what we want to talk about, more or less. And so go and read chapter 6 of the Gospel according to St. John. And again, it all starts today with this multiplication of the loaves and the fish. Now, the multiplication of the loaves and the fish is the only miracle that's recorded in all 4 Gospels, and the resurrection, if you count it as a miracle. It's the only one. The multiplication of the loaves and the fish is the only one that's in all 4 Gospels. And it starts here at the time of the Feast of Passover, following up from what we read last week in Mark's Gospel, where the big crowd follows Jesus into a deserted place. And they're so anxious to see Jesus that they followed him off into this deserted place and were with him for a large amount of time. And, well, now we're in the middle of nowhere and we've got no food. And so what are we going to do? And so Jesus, seeing this big crowd, 5,000 men plus the women and the children that had accompanied them, so we're talking maybe over 15,000 people. And Jesus sees the crowd, and he wants to provide for them, right? He wants to provide for them. He wants to care for them. He wants to feed them, right? And so, raising his eyes, seeing a large crowd, he talks to Philip, his apostle Philip. And I mean, poor Philip getting called on in this situation, right? Hey, Philip, where are we going to buy enough food to feed all these people, right? There's 15,000. I don't know if that's a reason as an apostle to have an anxiety attack. Like, wait a minute. Whoa, was that my plan? Did I miss that part of the planning, that I needed to make arrangements for the food? Hosting a summer picnic or something. It's like being sure there's enough food and who's responsible for that. And, did we forget this or that? I just had it happen very recently because when I like my hot dogs and hamburgers neat, like I don't want anything on them, no condiments, just meat and cheese and bread. And so I never think to buy ketchup, mustard, or relish. And so if you have a lot of people coming over for a cookout and someone says, hey, did you remember the condiments? Like, no, I didn't even think about it. Like, it doesn't even cross my mind that you put anything but more meat on a burger or a dog. And so Philip, hey, Philip, where are we going to buy enough food to feed all these people? And Philip kind of does a quick calculation. I don't know, let's be super practical here. Even if we had 200 days' wages, right? 2/3 of our annual salary, even if we had that much food, it wouldn't even be enough for everyone to have just a taste, just a little appetizer. So we're in trouble here, Jesus. I don't know what we're going to do. And then it's Andrew. Andrew comes through here with a real act of faith. Because he says, here's a boy that has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good are they among so many? Jesus, this is what we have. I don't know what good it'll do, because there's a lot of people, and we've just, we had to go rob this kid's lunch, right? There's some kid, he brought food, and a picture like the big apostles coming and stealing this kid's food, saying, give us that. We need it, right? But no, so they went, they got 5 loaves, 2 fish. It's all we've got, right? This is all we have. But Jesus, we don't know what we're going to do with it, but here you go. Now, how do we apply this to ourselves? Well, if we see this vast task of there's people that are physically hungry, and how are they provided for, but also those that are spiritually hungry, right? There are more people in our city of New Britain not in church today than there are in church. Okay, well, what do we do about it? How do we do it? What can we do? How can we get all these people that either stopped going to church or never went to church or don't want to come to church? How can we get all these people back to church? What can we do? And even if all of us worked so hard and did so much and we started new programs and we did all this, how are we ever going to get all these people back? And we can't be like Philip, where we try to do the calculation of what exactly does it cost, but rather like Andrew, to say, okay, like Jesus, here's what I have. I have an hour or 2 this week. I could maybe, have some friends over and we could just have a conversation about faith or start a Bible study or do something like that. I can reach out in some way. I have, 15 minutes free today. Jesus, I could stop in the church and say a prayer for someone. Like, I don't know what it's going to do. Like, I don't know what's this little 10 or 15-minute prayer among so many people that need faith, but Jesus, I can take the little that I have and I can give it to you. Jesus, if I take the little bit that I have and I bring it to you, then you do something with it, right? Jesus does something. He ends up feeding the whole crowd based on this little bit that was given to him. And so we need to be willing to give what we have. But there's a deeper meaning that during these 5 weeks, reflecting on the bread of life discourse and here the multiplication of the loaves and the fish, that we can try to understand a little bit better the reality of the Mass and the Eucharist. We're in this time of Eucharistic revival in our nation. We just had the Eucharistic Congress. Deacon Allen was able to go and had an incredible time, and I know a few others were able to be there, with 60,000 people adoring our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament and being together for the celebration of the Mass and processing with our Eucharistic Lord through the streets of Indianapolis. What a great witness that is. And so we, in this time of Eucharistic revival now, can, how do we learn from this passage how we can be uplifted and strengthen our belief in the Eucharist? And one point we can focus on at Mass today is the offertory of the Mass. So what's the offertory? Well, the offertory is when we get the altar ready and someone brings up the bread and the wine. We just started redoing that. We'd paused it for a little while over COVID, but now we're having people bring up the bread and the wine at our Sunday Masses. And we get everything ready and we prepare the altar. Okay, well, it's more than just like an interlude. And even though we play music and maybe we sing the hymn, this is not like the musical interlude of the Mass. This is not just like an intermission, this is not a set change, right? Going from the liturgy of the Word to the liturgy of the Eucharist. And so we need to have a set change, scene change. Stage crew comes out. Henry there serving, right? Stage crew comes out and gets everything ready. No, that's not what it is. The offertory of the Mass is an important part of the Mass. And what we do is we are offering our gifts, our time, our work to God. Like, that's what we do during the offertory of the Mass. We're taking bread and wine and we are offering it to God. And so that's why the bread and wine that now are brought up from the congregation is meant to be a sign. It's a sign of the community offering what is to be sacrificed, right? It's the community bringing this forward. We bring our sacrifices forward. Also, during the offertory of the Mass is when we take the collection. Again, it's not just convenient timing during our intermission, but rather when we put something in the collection basket or whatever we do, it's I'm making my monetary offering. I've earned this money in some way, right? And now I am offering from what I've earned. I have something and I'm giving it to God. When we offer in the collection basket, this is not just paying a church tax. This is not just, giving money to, you're not giving money to the church. When we offer, we are making this offering to God through the church for the upkeep of places of worship and the ability to do all the ministry that we do. But you're not giving it to me. You're not giving it to a corporation, right? Even though legally that's kind of how it works. But what spiritually we're doing when we make that offering is I'm taking something that's mine and I'm offering it to God. I'm giving it away to God. That boy with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish for them to be distributed had to give them up, right? He had to give them away through the hands of the apostles. And then we don't just offer bread and wine, we don't just offer our money, but we offer, and each one of us, because we share by baptism in the priesthood of Jesus Christ, each one of us offers our daily prayers, our sacrifices, our works throughout the week. And spiritually, during that time of the offertory, when the priest is saying the prayers with the bread and the wine, we should be kind of adding on to that spiritually all of my work of the day, all of my work of this past week. Jesus, here's everything I did this last week. Put it on the paten there, right? The paten's a little disc that we put the bread on. Put it there on the paten, right? So it's offered to God. In fact, this happens in the prayer that the priest says that kind of gets everyone to stand up. And again, I think maybe we just think about it as the cue to stand up prayer. But what is it? Pray, brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father, right? There's the sacrifice that I'm offering, and there's your daily sacrifices, my sacrifice and yours. Pray, brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father. And so, have we brought our sacrifices? And then what do? This is actually a very beautiful piece of liturgical theology. What do? May the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands. You're saying that to me as the priest. May the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands for the praise and glory of his name, for our good and the good of all of his holy church. So basically what we're doing when we do that is as our baptismal priesthood, we've brought all of our sacrifices and offerings from throughout the week, all the fruit of our work and our prayer. We've offered it spiritually in the Mass. We brought it here, and then by that one prayer, may the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands. You kind of give me, as the priest, the authority now to take all of that, and we offer it to God the Father here in the sacrifice of the Mass, right? It's united with the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. We unite it. We bring it to Jesus on the cross. And so that prayer is a very important prayer. It's not just the cue to stand up. It's a real thing. We offer this sacrifice. That's what we do in the Mass. We bring our offerings, we offer them to God, each one of us. And so just a good practical practice that we can work on is, during the week, when we leave church, after we leave church today, start storing stuff up for Mass next weekend, right? Start storing it up. Oh, okay. Like I've got to answer some emails tomorrow morning. Okay, Jesus, I'm storing that up. I'm going to bring that to Mass next week, and I'm going to offer it to you. This is part of my sacrifice of the week. Jesus, I have to have this conversation with someone that really gets on my nerves. Okay, like I'm going to bring it to Mass. I'm offering this too. Like this is going in my little Mass bag. And I'm going to bring it to church next week. And I'm going to offer it as part of the Mass and unite it with you on the cross. Jesus, I'm just having such a great day. The weather's beautiful. I'm just loving life right now. And this later half of the summer, I'm going to bring that to Mass too. I'm going to bring that joy. I'm going to bring just loving life right now today. Great. Store it up. Bring it next week. And then offer it in the Mass. This is our priesthood, our baptismal priesthood. And then we offer it in the sacrifice of the Mass as all of our works, all of our prayers, all of our joys, all of our sufferings are offered here in the Mass. When we take the little we have and we give it to Jesus, it's effective for the whole world. That's the last point, is that Jesus here with these 5 loaves and 2 fish feeds the whole crowd abundantly. He feeds the multitudes with the very little. Again, what do we pray? May the Lord accept the sacrifice at your hands for the praise and glory of his name, for our personal good, and for what? The good of all of his holy church. My smiling with someone who's a little frustrating, my slowing down at a yellow light so I can stop at the red one and not run right through it, offering that's good. It's good for all of the whole church, the whole world benefits from these sacrifices. We take our little things, and they're made fruitful and nourishing for all. And so let's offer them to the Lord. If we haven't seen our active role in the Mass, our active priestly role, now's the time to start. That offertory is not an intermission or an interlude. We offer to God. And the offerings that we bring are made acceptable and fruitful for our good and the good of the entire Holy Church.